Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Rowe. I am the CEO of Support After Abortion, and I am grateful to be among you today. I wanted to personally welcome you to our Support After Abortion Healing Network weekly Facebook Live event. You are going to hear personal testimonies, stories of restoration, how other people are providing restoration, and it is our hope that we can spread the message of hope and healing far and wide. I am so excited to introduce you to Karin Barbito, our program director. She is going to be interviewing someone so amazing today, and you are going to enjoy and leave enlightened, empowered, and equipped.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karin Barbito. Thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you again. Can you believe it? This is our 14th episode, season 1, episode 14. So you can go back and look at all the previous ones and take a look at all the really great guests we've had on for you. Today, we also have a very special guest. I am so excited, so excited to introduce you to Jody Duffy. Jody is a veteran. She was in the Army, and now she is the coordinator for MARCH, which stands for Military Abortion Recovery Care Healing. Thank you, Jody. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you, Karin. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and you were part of our conference this last week. Let me tell you, it's not too late to still get that premium pass. You can have 90 days access to
Awesome.
the 63 speakers that spoke during those 3 days, and there's some great content. And Jody had her own presentation, so be sure to look that up on our website when you get a chance. So Jody, military, tell me how that came about.
I went into the military after I finished college in 1980, and I went to officer candidate school to get a commission. And at that time, it was women were starting to break into the military. 1976, there was no longer a separation between the Army, the Women's Corps, and the rest of the Army. So the Women's Army Corps was dissolved, and every woman was now in the military. In 1980, the first class of women graduated from West Point, the Air Force Academy, and the Naval Academy. As a matter of fact, I'm friends with some of those women and met them back, after I got my commission. And that's how I went in back then.
Yeah, so that you were like, so the Army men and women were segregated up until 1976, and you got commissioned after college in 1980. So you were one of the first years where men and women were really co-ed in the military.
Yes.
Right? And so tell me what that was like on the base, or when you would go out in the economy. I don't know what you called it. When you would go outside of the base, what was that like? Being in the same, doing the same things that men were doing, and how did men feel about that?
I think those of us that had gone now back then, basic training was separate. We were in our own platoon. We are in our own living quarters, but our platoons were mixed. So all the training I was doing was with men, and we were all together. I think we all just did what we were supposed to do. And there really wasn't a lot of, you could see in basic training, guys and girls kind of liking each other and that type of thing. But after that, I went to officer candidate school, which was at Fort Benning, Georgia, before I got commissioned to get my commissioning in the Army. And that was a little bit different because we were just total, all the time. From the time we woke up at 5 a.m. till the time we went to bed at 10 o'clock at night, we were just go. Now, yeah, there were probably some of those guys that resented us being there. But for the most part, no, I didn't feel.
That's good. So that's good to hear. So what we see on TV, like with the G.I. Jane and stuff, isn't what actually happens in the military when men and women serve side by side. That's actually refreshing for me to hear that. Yeah. Now, what?
No, I mean, it really wasn't. I think the men, were acceptive of, and they were receptive of us.
That's good.
They had no choice.
So now
I mean, they had to be.
Yeah. So you're here. This is the Support After Abortion Healing Network. So you're here because you work in the industry and you've personally been impacted by abortion. Do you mind sharing your story with us?
Sure, I will. I was when you're, like I said, when you're in officer candidate school, you're go all the time. You don't go anywhere. It's just all the training. But near the end of it, you start to get privileges for a weekend. Depending on, how did your platoon do? Well, you guys did well on inspections and all this. So you're going to get from Friday, at 5 o'clock till Sunday at 5 o'clock, and you can go do what you want in around the area. Because we were getting ready to be commissioned, we were allowed to go to the officer club. It was May of 1980. It was nice outside. So some of the other girls that were in officer candidate school and I decided to go to the officer club pool. Now, back in 1980, I weighed 110 pounds. And I looked good in a bikini.
I don't think I've ever weighed 110 pounds, but I'm glad you once did.
So we went over there, and there were some guys that had just been commissioned, and we were talking to them, and one of them asked me if I would go out with him the next night, because I think that was that night, because it was a Saturday, and I did. And then he wanted to know if I would go out with him the next weekend, and I did. But on that date, there was a date rape. All right, and after I went back, you can't really tell anybody because of the fact that he was already commissioned, and I was like 2 weeks from being commissioned. I really wasn't supposed to be out with him, and I wasn't supposed to be where I was. So I just kind of went back, and a few weeks later, we graduated, and I was commissioned, and I took a little bit of leave, and then my next duty station was out in Arizona. There was a guy there who asked me out on a date, and I told him I just wasn't ready to date. And I kind of told him what had happened. He was also in the Army. And I told him what had happened. And he goes, wow, well, can we be friends? Okay, we can be friends. And so we went around as friends for a while, but then I suspected I was pregnant. You remember when you're when an officer candidate school, you're constantly going, you're running all the time. A couple missed periods wasn't anything abnormal when you're really in that situation. But this was a little bit too long, and I was feeling something wasn't right. So I walked over to the military Army hospital. Back then, you didn't have instant tests. You had to wait a few days. And when I went back, it came back positive. And I told my friend, and I'll just say his name was Steve, but it wasn't. I told him, and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't really know. And he called me a few days later and said, look, I called a doctor's office in Tucson, which was 80 miles away. And I've got an appointment for you on Saturday morning. You can get an abortion. Well, first thing from my mind, I didn't even think about that. I just didn't know what I was going to do. And I didn't know what else to do. So I said, okay. And he picked me up Friday after work, and we drove to Tucson. And Saturday morning, he drove me to that doctor's office, and I went in there. I had the abortion. And what was so creepy about it was that this guy saw regular OB patients. And I walked into that waiting room, and there were pregnant women that he was going to see and deliver their babies, in a month or two. But he takes me back and performs an abortion.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I had to then go back, and on Monday, every day we had physical training. We would run 5 miles. We would do this. Well, I couldn't do that. So I went what we call sick call. So I went to the clinic, And I had to tell the doctor there that I needed a profile, meaning, I wasn't going to be able to do physical activity for a week or two or whatever. And I had to tell him why. And this lieutenant colonel doctor looked at me and he said, "Oh, well, you know what? I wish my daughter had had an abortion because she ended up getting pregnant and marrying this loser." I mean, it was just not the right thing to say to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had to go back to work like nothing happened.
Yeah,
And
that's so similar to what we hear from all of our clients, right? Like even my own personal story. I was in college and I found out on a Wednesday. I had my procedure on Friday. I was back in class on Monday.
Right.
It was a problem that had to be solved, and I didn't think about whether I was pro-life, pro-choice. I was just pro-me. You know what I mean? And didn't know what to do. And so I can't even imagine with the added pressures of being the military, you just spent so much time and invested so much of who you are into this career path that you had chosen for yourself, and then just with really nobody to talk to about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned, I want to go back to something because the people watching, and even myself, I'm not really sure what it means. You said that one of the things that was difficult for you was that he had already been commissioned.
Yeah.
Can you explain to those people that are watching what that means?
That means that he was an officer and I wasn't yet.
Okay, so there's a process that you go through.
You can get commissioned either through officer candidate school, which I did, through reserve officer training course, or through the military academy. And he had gone through the officer candidate school in the class before mine. And he was still there going through infantry officer basic course. So he was a commissioned officer. I wasn't yet. And so that was kind of a fraternization type thing that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, like teacher and student, right? Kind of along the same lines. Okay, so I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like, and not having anybody to tell and no family around and things like that. So just hear my heart.
Thank you.
Nobody, I mean, it's not an easy decision to make, and it's not an easy process to go through. And afterwards, it's still not easy. So hear me. So let's get to the good stuff, because talking to you, I can hear that you're healed, right? Like you've gone through healing for that wound. And so tell us about the healing, because that's what we're all about.
Okay. Absolutely. So about 19, after that, I met my husband, who was also in the military, and we got married, and eventually, after doing 4 years of service, I got out because I had one baby already, and then I was having another one, and my husband was special forces and he was always gone. So I made the decision that I was going to stay home with the kids. And then 19 years after that abortion, now I go back, I told my husband immediately, like 2 weeks after we started dating. I didn't want it to be a secret. And he was very kind, and, he understood completely. And then we never talked about it because I never did. He thought I was okay. And 19 years after that abortion in 2000, it was 2000, I just totally lost it for some reason. And he was like, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, that thing, that happened. Wait, he goes, "You never talk about it. You've never talked about it." And he said, how can I help you? And I said, "I don't know." Then, of course, the Holy Spirit knew, right? Sent me to a March for Life in Atlanta. And I said to God, the Holy Spirit's like, "You need to go there." And I said, "No, I don't do pro-life stuff, God. I don't do that." Holy Spirit kept saying, "You got to go. You got to go." I went to the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception and went to the Mass for the unborn there. And afterwards, in their basement, they had a lot of people with pro-life stuff all over the place. And I just randomly picked up a lot of stuff. But while I was in that Mass, I cried a bucket of tears. It was the beginning of my healing. I just cried and cried and cried. And then I did the little silent march, and then I went home with a stack of stuff, and I just started going through it. And all of a sudden it said, you know, do you hurt from abortion, post-abortion treatment and healing? And I called the number and I talked to Mary Ann McNeil, and we sat down and talked, and then she got me with a facilitator. Myself and another woman went through Forgiven and Set Free, and then Pat started doing Rachel's Vineyard. So we started doing Rachel's Vineyard because after I got my healing, I just said to Mary Ann, I feel like God's calling me to do this. And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I want to stop you there because you just said something that is so important for those people that are watching, especially if you've had an abortion and are too afraid to reach out for help. You know, like my testimony, like Jody's testimony, like the testimony of 15 people from our virtual conference. You know, it's through that healing that we bring purpose to our pain. You know, having an abortion is painful, you know, and so once you get healing and you get to that place of closure, the natural inclination is to want to give back, right? Is to want to help other people find that healing as well. So trust us. You won't go through the process alone. Somebody will be right alongside you to make sure that you get through that grief and find that place of closure, but you are worth it. We want you to reach out for help. So that's how you can contact us right there at our Support After Abortion website. And later in the show, we're going to give you how you can call this woman, Jody Duffy, directly. So I just needed to point that out because, right, that's what we do. We get healed and we want to give back. That's exactly why I'm sitting in this chair. So you mentioned Mary Ann McNeil, and she was the director of PATH,
Right.
which is that post-abortion treatment and healing for many, many years. And you started to volunteer, right? After you got healing and you started to offer. So let's pick up there. What are those programs that you offered when you were volunteering?
When I came in, it was originally just Forgiven and Set Free. And then PATH found out about Rachel's Vineyard, got trained to do Rachel's Vineyard. And around the same time, 2001. So we were offering Forgiven and Set Free and Rachel's Vineyard for many years. And then in 2015, I became the director of PATH. And Dr. Martha Shuping, who was also one of our board members, had talked to me about Save One. And so I went to a training for Save One, and we decided to bring Save One to PATH. And so PATH offers Save One and Rachel's Vineyard.
I love this. I just love all the connections that are being made. Martha Shuping was a presenter at our conference, and just that you started with Forgiven and Set Free. You did Surrendering the. Did you say that you did Surrendering the Secret?
Forgiven and Set Free.
Okay, my apologies. So you started with that. You went to Rachel's Vineyard. Then you have started to include Save One. That's exactly what we're talking about in our options-based approach, right? Some people like a retreat model. Some people like things that are more Bible forward. Others more religiously neutral. And you guys are doing it, and we didn't even know until we met you, Jody, for this interview. So I want to highlight that. That's so great.
Yeah.
So you were the director of it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But prior to becoming the director, I was doing an outreach to our veterans in the Atlanta area. I belong to a group called Georgia Military Women. It's a Facebook group. And the administrator of that Facebook group, I met probably about 7 or 8 years ago, Dr. Amy Stevens, who is a Navy veteran and a counselor, her PhD in counseling, and a very big veterans advocate. She does a lot for veterans. And I talked to her about this, and I asked her, if we're having a retreat, may I ever put that on our Georgia Military Women web on the Facebook page? And that's how I was outreaching to them, to get them to come on to one of our retreats and come into one of our programs, Bible study, retreat, whatever it was. But then when I took over as director, that kind of went to the wayside because I didn't have time to do that like I did before. And then I had some health issues. I moved south of Atlanta, and I gave the directorship over, but God kept urging me to keep doing something. And last year, about a year ago, I did the presentation about reaching out to veterans and military at the Save One Summit that Sheila Harper had. And it was at that conference that God spoke to me and said, you need to have something that's just, you're only going to serve military and veterans through a Save One Bible study, through a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, only them, not inviting them to one where other people are, but one that's just for them.
That is so good. That is so good. You know, honestly, you filled a gap, right? People that have served, first of all, thank you for your service. And for any veterans or active military or reserves out there, we thank you for your service. Thank you for protecting us and our country. Just want you to hear that. But, you know, you guys go through a lot that we never experienced, right? You know, and so to be able to have the safe place to be able to share with people that know exactly what I'm going through because they've been through it, right? That's that whole relatability piece. So tell me about some of, you know, when we talked briefly the other day, you told me about some of the testimonies of people that have reached out to you and what you've been able to help them with. Do you mind sharing? This could be a little graphic if you're watching, but I think it's important to understand military sexual trauma and abortion and how it's so much more prevalent in the military than in other populations around the country. Do you mind sharing that with us, Jody?
No, absolutely. What happened was trial by, or baptism by fire in a way. In the early stages and maybe the mid 2000s and the late 2000s, there were two women who came on our Rachel's Vineyard retreat who were from, within the Atlanta area. We didn't know they were veterans, had no idea they were veterans because it wasn't something we asked them. What we didn't know was those women came for healing from abortions, but those women had been sexually assaulted while they were in the military, and they hadn't had any healing from that. So this abortion healing triggered all of that. And we ended up, one of them, we ended up having to get her into the VA system. And she's done such a remarkable job. She's so far helped me with Save One Bible studies. But for her her story, she's, has given me her story and permission to use it. She was unfortunately raped while she was in the Navy, and it resulted in a pregnancy, and she had an abortion, and she thought she was going to go through a Rachel's Vineyard so that she could help women, and not realizing that all this trauma was deep down in there. Then after I met Dr. Amy Stevens, I said, what can I do about this? And Amy said, Jody, on your intake forms, whether it's for a Bible study or your retreat, ask the question, are you military, active guard, reserve, or a veteran? So we ask that. And when they check yes, I call them and I talk to them and I have that conversation. Were you a victim of military sexual trauma? If they tell me no, that was not in anything part of my military, then I'm like, okay, welcome to our retreat or whatever,
So I want to ask you, you just said something that was really telling to me. You said that this person that you asked said, ask on the intake, or somehow it became important to you that when you do that intake process, ask if they're a military. We don't do that. We don't do that. So tell us who should do that. So pregnancy centers, ministry leaders, people that are hosting virtual groups in churches, find out if the person that is coming through your healing has been a military person and connect them with you, Jody, so that you can ask them that question and get them connected to mental health support through the VA. Is that what
Well,
we do?
if they're active duty, if they tell me they have been a victim, I need to know where they are in their healing. Have they gone through any of that counseling? If they say they haven't, then that's the first thing they need to do. Okay? Because the abortion healing will trigger, the abortion healing program will trigger all that. They need to be healed from that too first. So if they're an active duty member, they can go on base to the mental health counseling, or they can use their TRICARE and go to private counseling off base. If they're active duty, guard, reserve, or a veteran, the veteran can go to the VA and get into the VA program, which is what this one woman did. We got her into the VA program, and but the difference between a VA hospital and a VA center. VA centers are part of the VA, but what they are is they're located throughout a lot of communities, okay? Just VA centers. And all they are is a center for mental health healing.
Okay.
So there's counselors at VA centers that work with people who have PTSD and MST, military sexual trauma. That's all they do at these veteran centers. And anyone that is military, active, guard, reserve, veteran can go to a VA center. Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And start working on getting that healing from the PTSD or the MST. And then from there, there was a woman who went through a retreat of ours like 2 years ago. I had the discussion with her. Her abortion, and we got to get this straight. I don't care when that veteran or military person had the abortion. It may not have been while they were in the military. It doesn't matter. They may have had that abortion as a teenager, but they're going to go through that healing. But that military sexual trauma is still going to get, triggered by the healing program they're going through. And so there was a woman who had an abortion while she was in the military, but the military sexual trauma took place some years after that.
Got it. I got it.
Discussion. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter the order of the sexual trauma or the abortion. That abortion healing tends to trigger the trauma that happened whenever it happened. So we're running out of time, but you said something right before we started about family members and about the dynamics of a military family. Could you share that with us?
Yes, I'm also the spouse of a military person. Our military families are the backbone of our military. Okay, so the soldier who has an unhealed wife at home or an unhealed teenage daughter at home is going to be affected by them not being healed. And believe me, when you're in the military and you're a military family, you're moving all the time. You've got a lot of stress all the time, deployments. So mom's not healed. Mom's falling apart because dad's getting deployed again. Her husband's, they moved again. There's another deployment. And, she breaks down and maybe doesn't realize that a lot of this was triggered by a past abortion that she hasn't healed from. So we need to get her healed too. And the way, what I recommend people do if they're near a post or a base, doesn't matter, Army, Navy, Air Force, Reserve. Every post has what they have Protestant women of chapel and they have Catholic women of chapel. And you can approach and find out who the president of it is of each of those and say, look, we offer this. Chances are they might be doing a Save One, because I know of some of the military spouses groups that are doing Save One through the Protestant Women of Chapel and stuff.
Yeah, and I just want to point out men are affected too. I'm sitting here wondering, that friend that made that appointment for you, I don't know if you've talked to him over the years, but whether or not he struggled with that later on in life, and maybe that will come up for him, but men are impacted as well. So
Absolutely.
I just thank you for that. Now what's so important here is that you are willing to have anybody that's watching that's in active military or a veteran or the reserves that's either experienced sexual trauma via the military or has been an abortion, that they can contact you and you will point them in the right direction. I hope you have volunteers working with you, Jody, because your phone number and your email might blow up, my dear. So here's where you can contact Jody at her email, pathjody@gmail.com. Please, if you're struggling from sexual trauma during the military or an abortion, or if you're a family member of a military family, understand the impact that you're having on the other members of your family. To serve our country takes a lot of dedication and focus. So to have any distractions like that, that's what I'm hearing from you, Jody. To have any distractions like that can really take away from their performance and could jeopardize their lives potentially. We have a phone number for Jody as well, if you prefer to call her. Can they text also to that number, Jody?
Absolutely. That's my cell.
Okay. So again, you can call or text Jody. If you want to talk to her personally, she's the only one that's going to answer those emails or answer that phone.
That's
So you
right.
know you're going to be talking to somebody that you can relate to. Her number is 404-247-9046. Jody, it's been so much fun talking to you. You're
Well,
just
it's
such
great
a
seeing
delight.
you
I'm
again.
so glad I met you in
I am.
Washington, D.C. a couple
I'm so
years
glad I
ago.
met you too.
So I would be remiss if I don't ask you to share this video. It will be available on our Facebook page, but share it, or in our YouTube page. Share it. You never know who might see this. Be a military person, and their life can be changed as a result of just watching a half-hour video. Abortion impacts everybody. There's no face to abortion. It could be our dentist, the cashier at our favorite grocery store, the person that just waited on us when we had dinner. It happens 1 in 4 women by the time they're 45. And we are all about building and strengthening abortion healing worldwide. So please help us with our mission to accomplish that. You can still register for the premier package for our virtual conference. You don't want to miss out of that. There's the website. 90 days, well, almost 90 days still free to be able to look at all that content. Thank you very much. We'll see you next Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday at 4:00. So thanks for listening, folks. It's been a real pleasure. See you next
Thanks,
week.
Karin.
You're welcome.